Well, so thank you so much for being here today. I have an exciting panel that I want to introduce to you. And the panel really focuses on digital health and technology. And we've been promised a revolution in healthcare for quite some time. And we're just, I think, starting to see the glimmer of some of these interesting innovations actually come to bear and come to market. And so my speakers all exemplify this. So everything from revolutionizing clinical trials to redesigning how you deliver healthcare in a primary care clinic, to bringing consumer technology and know-how into healthcare, and finally, even using your sneaker as a fitness tracker. So as you'll hear today, we have a really incredibly interesting panel, and I'm excited to present them to you. So our first speaker is Mr. Chul Lee. He's head of the data team at Under Armour currently, and Under Armour's connected fitness team, who's doing some amazing work. He's leading a variety of next-generation AI and machine learning projects in the field of health and fitness, including the development of data products, including the MyFitnessPal, MyFitness, and Mondo, and the UA record and overall data governance. Prior to joining Under Armour, Chul managed a team at LinkedIn that operated several engines for LinkedIn content products. And he also co-founded a social news startup that delivered personalized news to consumers by aggregating the entire blogosphere as well as news sites, and as well as a combination of 1 million of social media signals. He's a big fan of diversity. He has a really interesting background. He's lived in a variety of different places. He was born in Korea, raised in Mexico, studied in Canada, and now is living in the United States. And he hasn't moved back to Canada yet, so that's a good sign. And the title of his talk is Smart Apps Using Crowdsourced Fitness Data. So please help me welcome Mr. Chul Lee.
All right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Chul Lee. As I was introduced by the moderator, I'm head of data science right now at Under Armour Connected Fitness. So you might actually find my talk a little bit off the main theme of this conference, because what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about the overall landscape of what's happening around product innovation with fitness data. But hopefully you can find that exciting as I do. So let's talk about big data. So from my perspective, and based on my previous experience in industry and then working with different data sets, there are pretty much 3 prerequisites for big data revolution or innovation. Number 1 is big data. You need to have data handy in order to solve a problem. Second factor that you need to have for innovation is making sure that your data set is complete, as opposed to being too fragmented and then just having one view of data, right? So you want to make sure that data is clean, organized, structured, and so on. And the third factor that you need to have in order to drive big data revolution is you really have to spend a lot of time in order to create some kind of value out of it, right? Because this is something that a lot of data scientists, including myself, we tend to fail, because we think that just having a clean data and just having a data set there is more than sufficient. But many times that's not sufficient, right? Because you need to really create a value, and then you need to spend a lot of time and effort to try to figure that out, right? So let's take a look at what's happening with fitness data. So in terms of data sets and in terms of data access available in fitness field, I think we are reaching a point where we can really talk about big data, right? Because of the arrival of tens of millions of connected devices and then different fitness apps that we have been seeing in the market, we start kind of collecting tons of data using these devices as well as these fitness apps. As one example, and because I can talk about this company because I'm part of that company, it's Under Armour Connected Fitness. So Under Armour Connected Fitness has acquired several apps and also has built different ecosystem around connected devices. And through this effort, we're able to build one of the largest health and fitness community in the planet. What does it mean? So we have about 200 million users, which have generated over 200 million food items. And these food items can be translated into 26 billion food logs. And then at the same time, using different connected devices and apps, our users have produced hundreds of millions of workouts as well as exercise entries. So once you kind of start looking into this ecosystem and then this fitness data, then you can really start realizing that there is abundance of data in this field, and there's so many things that you can do out of it. The second factor that I mentioned during my intro was, okay, we want to have complete data as opposed to having a fragmented and low-quality data. How can we make that happen? The best practice that a lot of companies have been adopting and using was all about creating holistic experience. So let's look at the evolution of graphs in the past, right? And then from there, probably we can get very valuable lessons through these examples. So number one would be a well-known example of well-known case in the industry of Google, right? So Google has been created holistic experience around like knowledge graph. Facebook, a holistic experience around social graph. LinkedIn has been created a lot of holistic experience around economic graph. So at this point, the question is, can we replicate the same success, and then can we start creating the similar type of health and fitness graph and then create value out of it? We think that's possible, but the question is, how is that going to look like, right? So this is how we were envisioning in terms of creating holistic experience around fitness and health. This is how it's going to work. So using our connected fitness devices as well as apps, we want to start tracking and producing a lot of diet, activity, and body metrics data. So once that we have created this big data ecosystem, we want to apply different techniques and product innovations to drive value to our users. And then that's what I call as the big data product innovation. So once that big data product innovation happens, then organically we kind of start seeing our users connecting to their friends and then sharing their experiences, and also start sharing and promoting, distributing content around fitness. And then in that way, we can start creating a very healthy ecosystem, which is going to create and bring value to the market in terms of holistic experience. So let's take a look at the video that can illustrate better what I mean by holistic experience.
Our job is to make you better. To make all athletes better. To inspire you. To empower you. And to connect you to the world's greatest design and innovation. All you must provide is the will to make it happen.
So the third factor that I was talking about during my intro was, okay, so now we have a lot of data sets and big data assets, and how can we create value out of those data sets and big data? So I'm going to do deep dive into some of the industry cases across different companies and then different product innovations. And then from there, I'm going to talk a little bit about some lessons learned, and then hopefully we can start having some kind of dialogue out of those industry cases. So the first example is the food logging experience that Under Armour has created through MyFitnessPal. I don't know how many of you are familiar with MyFitnessPal, but MyFitnessPal is #1 nutrition app in the market, and then this has been widely used by different people in the community. And then this is the way that it works, right? So you go to the app and you start looking into foods that you have consumed, and then you search your food item, and then once that you have found out that food item, then you log that food, and then you continue tracking, right? So that simple experience has been really effective in order to create one of the largest food databases in the planet. Why? Because users come in and they created the food, and the same food that was created by that user can be used by other user to help out with his or her nutrition tracking experience. So through this process, we'll be able to create really large ecosystem around nutrition tracking, and then this has been extremely successful journey for us. The second example of how the big data can help out product innovation and how we can really create value out of that data is a feature that we call as restaurant logging. Restaurant logging is a feature that we launched a year and a half ago. And then this feature is all about making your food logging experience local. So this means that you click on our app, and then you can take a look at restaurants around your area because you're eating outside. And then you click on the restaurant, and then you now have access to your restaurant menu. And then you choose the food item or dish that you have consumed. And once that you have selected that food, and then that food has nutrition content, since that's the food that you consume, you like it, and you click on it, and you move on, and you're done with tracking. So this simple process requires quite a bit of data science. Why? Because a lot of restaurant providers or menu data providers, they don't really provide nutrition information because they lack that facet of data set, right? So, and then remember, like I said in the intro, having the data components is very, very important. So in order to really complement that aspect of data, we had to solve this problem of how to match the most relevant food from the restaurant menu to a food database that we have, right? And then this actually is a very interesting text mining problem. And then in order to solve that problem, to surprising enough, we have used deep learning techniques, and then that has been incredibly successful in order to develop this feature, right? So this is a use case of how we can combine big data approaches with the data to create a lot of value for our users and consumers. The other example is a practice that has been very common in industry, which is data visualization, right? So having just atomic data might not create enough value. But once that we kind of start aggregating and then driving insights and patterns, that's when you can really start seeing a lot of value out of your big data assets, right? So this is why we have put a lot of effort around data visualization so that people who are not necessarily data scientists can start understanding the value of data so that they can really start making some key decisions using these data assets, aggregate insights, patterns, and so on. So here's another example of workout data that we have worked on, and then we have been able to create aggregation of different workout data, and then marketers, salespeople, and then people with different background, they can leverage this data set and this aggregation view of data in order to create a value for their own functions. The other pattern that we are start seeing in the industry is, how we can remove friction with food logging as well as the collection of data. Because something that a lot of people have not realized enough is that users, average person, has such a difficulty in terms of producing data or letting the person to be, having the data being collected, and therefore something that a lot of companies and startups have been putting a lot of effort is how we can remove the friction and reduce the cost of collecting data, right? So as example, visual logging is one feature that a lot of startups and companies have been trying to market. And then the way that works is using computer vision technology. You take a picture of the food, and then automatically the mobile app should be able to detect what kind of food that is, right? In the same way, OCR technology has been incredibly effective for the purpose of removing friction around logging. Big data plus oncology is something that has been really popular, and then I know this is something that has been actively covered during this conference. Finally, using AI for fitness is just the beginning of the era, and then this is something that we have been investigating quite a bit, and then we're not claiming that we have really achieved our ultimate holistic experience of making the fitness coaching experience awesome through a strong AI, but we have developed certain features which can provide insights for our customers. So I like to wrap up my talk just saying that this is just start of something bigger, and then we're going to need a lot of your help to continue with this journey, and then I'd be more than happy to have a dialogue after my talk. Thank you.